She wakes bound in the dark, and the first thing she knows is that she is still herself. Something struck her, a blow carrying a charm strong enough to pass through her own ancestral defenses and her sister's. Whatever did this was powerful. Wherever this is, she was put here on purpose. A young warrior lies chained beside her. She asks him where they are. A ship, he tells her. We lost. We're crossing. He doesn't know her office, healer or mover, but he knows enough to use her title. That, more than anything, tells her how bad it is. She whispers the syllables that make the vibration, the sound that lets wood remember it is mostly water, mostly air, mostly willing to embrace the sea instead of fighting it. The ship answers. It dives, like a bird of prey folding its wings toward the bottom of the water. She holds the one who did this to her the way a crab holds what it will not release. She is not finished with him. With the last of her thought on this side of things, she tells him, "Welcome to eternity." What's coming for him is a debt that runs generations deep, and it does not forgive quickly. Her warriors go to sleep on this plane forever, sent ahead to the ancestors who are waiting for them. She thinks of her own line, the sisters, the sages who came before her. Will they hear her story? Will they accept what she did and how she did it? The ship has rested on the bottom long enough. The time for wondering what comes next is over. She speaks the last words, the ones that end this understanding of time. The scientist. The only person who calls me algebra consistently is Mother Dear, my grandmother, who the rest of the family calls Mudir. But if I were the type of brother to say it like that, I wouldn't have marched across the floor in the 10th grade to bow before Chris, the prettiest girl ever, and say, "Milady, wouldst thou care to dance?" It was loud enough to make sure the laughter and the teasing sent me to the library the last 2 years in high school. I thought I was being so cool, but that was okay. If I were to be honest, I'd say I fell in love with Tolkien before I fell in love with girls, and I was and am far better with him than I ever was with them. My name is Dr. Algebra Perry Davis III, and says my title please at 27 they don't give 'em away in Cracker Jack boxes, and I'm proud. I asked Mother Dear once why the men in my family were named Algebra. She told me in her Alabama patois she hits me for trying to imitate that they wanted us to be smart lil niggas. She can call me anything she wants, including any flavor of nigger. And besides, whoever named us knew what they were doing. When the nice white lady sat and tested me, she didn't understand what I meant by, "I can see functions and numbers." I think now she was shocked a 10-year-old black kid could describe what a function was, but she didn't say it out loud or anything. I didn't mind taking the test again when she didn't believe the genius it said. I didn't even mind taking it again for the state and again for someone else. Heck, it got me out of class and it was summer. They didn't let us play for the smog alerts, wouldn't let us outside to play on the concrete grass. They didn't need water. The air was too bad. My first orgasm came when someone showed me a fractal. It was so pornographic. It told me her name was Chaka, and she wore shiny tap pants like the real one. I still keep the equation next to my bed, and before I TM, let me just state that since I'm going to be calling women milady in the information age, it's nice math makes me happy. Parrots. They're beautiful and loud with their red heads over vibrant green. They're wild and free. They fly all around Pasadena. Somebody a long time ago brought some in as pets and they escaped. The climate around here must have really been to their liking. They must be on their 100th generation of freedom, and God has let them in from the desert and given them Pasadena as their Israel. Pasadena was built by the kind of wealth so vast it doesn't need to wear a watch because it determines who is late. Let me set the environment for you. It is linked to Los Angeles by California and the West's first freeway, what we now call the 110 or Arroyo Seco Parkway. But when it was constructed was known as the Pasadena Freeway. You might wonder how having the first freeway in America means time waits for you. And let me tell you, they built it purposefully with looping curves and lovely parks surrounding it. No engineer's straight-line efficiencies for these people. Driving into Pasadena was meant to be an event, and one you went to through beautiful environs and narrow lanes. Consequently, when I was a lad growing up, just about every school in the San Gabriel Valley had a missing person from the graduating class who went too fast and plunged into the LA River or missed a curve and slammed into a tree. The blocks on this street are wicked long and are an artifact of its beginnings, as one of the Southland's first millionaires' row built by Easterners one-upping each other in their western retreats. The names on the mansions read like a who's who of early 20th century mega money. Bush had his first gardens. Gamble had a mansion that used no metal fasteners. Wrigley chewed up a huge chunk with a lovely house that's used as the parade's headquarters today. I'm lucky. The house at the top of Fair Oaks was built like Pasadena was, by money. To actually buy a spot up here like this is way more than my salary or 10 times it can buy. It has a granny flat I inhabit. The trust that now owns it seemed to die with the old lady whose father invented a new way to twist wire hangers. Maybe he was the chemist that made that boom go that much faster. I never hear from them. I kept meaning to look him up on the net, but some new math article was always more interesting and sometimes scantily dressed. It began its life after World War I as a horse barn attached to a car's garage, but its location high in the hills of behind Pasadena was choice. I've never had a car, and riding a bike downhill to class or downhill to my job was advantageous. You're way less tired in the morning when you have to ride your bike around than you are in the evening in hilly Southern California. Squawk, squared even, from the parrots. It looks in my head like a pointy triangle that calls itself Lenny because I thought of it as squared, and the avian New Israelites wake me from my morning reverie. I grab my coat, grab my underbite coffee carrier full, and my ultra-light racing bike off 2 hooks on a wall that probably held tack back in the 20s. It's a beautiful day. Most days are here even when the clouds are cold and gray against the mountains my pad is situated on. I look south and head into Caltech, where I not only graduated but teach undergraduate mathematics. Not a bad way.
Most people are using artificial intelligence. Very few are training with it. BrilliantDojo is black belt training for the age of AI. Here, we practice 4 disciplines. Recognize drift when an answer sounds right, but leaves your actual intent behind. Hold context, because the frame determines what the system can see. Restore signal, separating probability from meaning. And preserve judgment, because assistance is not authority. We'll study transformers, attention, softmax, prompt discipline, and the archive integrity protocol. Then we'll test those ideas in the field, in stories, and occasionally in worlds where the dojo was never supposed to exist. No worship. No fear. No surrender of the human mind. The doors are open. Enter curious. Leave more capable.
The Drake. Don't tell me, motherfucker, I was there, said the Drake, in a long-distance phone call to an oversoul fair and near away. The Drake threw down all day. Fucking eyeballs. Didn't fucking have to shake my glass for that sweet eyeball juice to fill my beak, and I got high, yes, Lord. I was fucked up. Genghis Khan set out the best feast the fuck Eva. Hey, let me hit you back. Someone hit a deer, and someone dropped a French fry and a dead fish, and someone threw up in spicy Thai food. It's all so good to the Drake. Schwartz Malamud, one of the few motherfuckers the Drake can caw a friend. That nigga was there too at Hurtgen Forest. Oh shit, we got high guts all over the place. They kept stacking that shit up. Maybe my nigga had a point. The U.S. Army puts out some good eats, true. I know, motherfucker, I was there. The Drake cawed. Hummingbird. The Drake stabs it 'cause the motherfucker thinks he's so smart. The Drake is the agent of karma. The Drake was there when those fools made the Dharma. The Drake got a special dispensation from the Creator when he got here. The Drake has always been here. The Drake is all about that law. The Drake ain't no lawbird. Naw, motherfucker, that's so raven. The Drake is that black, sinewy mandingo crow joint. My nigga Schwartz got the Talmud tatted on all his feathers, gives no fucks who thinks it's wrong. Caw a nigga bout to go Jay-Z. Give me a motherfucking beat. There is only one creator, man. Don't go fucking around making idols and shit, worship the one damn. Love that creator, cause guess what that fool is? You don't use God's name, just keep it holy in all you do. Every TikTok, keep tight one day. Not enough for you? Honor your before. Don't murder motherfuckers out the door. Don't cheat, motherfucker. And, you know what I mean? Or want the shit that go to a different team? Prime directive? Yo, you reap what you sow. Have some fucking integrity and do unto others. G. You'll know your opponent. They gotta wear the colors of their dream. You can't enslave a soul. Know what I mean? Don't tell me, motherfucker, I was there. Parrots. Motherfuckers. I hate them more than I hate those fucking hawks. They just talk shit, never do shit. I fly a symphony beating my wings that starts a party in hell. The Drake would call a posse for a hawk, maybe see if Schwartz wanna ride shot. Tapas pops. Maxie is hot again, I said into my 2 generations old smartphone. No, I don't. And I'm on New York Drive. No Pops the freeway part. To the questions Pops had about the AAA and why I didn't ask someone for their hose and some water for my overheating Nissan. Glancing right, I can see good old Pasadena High School by looking across a golf course, and the idea of the 10-year reunion approaching in a few months filled me with as much loathing as the idea of walking half a mile back and forth to the gas station I can see if I looked in the other direction. Just when I was about to get up a full funk of steamy Maxie here comes 30 colorful shirts, a flight of high-speed bicyclists swept by, chasing me up on the curb and out of the bike lane. Out of the pack is a man not dressed for a workout, but like a black man that uses Steely Dan to outline the contours of his life. It took him more time than the racers to get to me, but he did pumping with a look on his face like he didn't have a care in the world, or maybe something was tickling him. Algie, I said out loud as I thought I was thinking it. It was nice as a woman to see someone you know pedaling at you on a lonely piece of street, but even more, he likes me, I can tell. All women have men who want to like you. My mom's black lady ass and the breasts I have to supplement my bra's engineering with arm crossing when I run make sure to that. I've never weighed below 200. Shh, no one knows that. In my grown life. I guess he sees. Or the wide brown eyes and perfectly oval hair follicles the Korean ladies sell I got from Dadaji. Funny, I don't think of getting my hair from my dad but his. Maybe if I had known him better, or at all, really. Algie is getting closer, not close enough for conversation, but I hear him. Natasha Milade, your steed seems parched and dry. God, he's corny, but he's cute. He looks at me, though I watch him never too long, but I know what he wants. Oh, parched steel equus, I have rode miles or service. Perhaps for a kiss? Haiku and Renaissance fair Algie? You're so corny. But I smiled and hoped it didn't hurt his feelings. The enthusiasm he ripped the liquid carriers off his bike and dove under my hood let me know I hadn't. We met as grad students when we were both teaching a seminar to kids at the local city college just a block from Caltech. He would explain the math in my astrophysics program like he was watching a movie. Sometimes he'd get so engrossed it was like he was. I showed him something I'd been trying to figure out since my first competition. He said it was beautiful and reminded him of Kandinsky, and he looked at me in the way that scared me to be alone with him. We should have met earlier. There aren't that many field medal or Westinghouse winners in the country, let alone 2 minorities kids from the same little cities in the San Gabriel Valley. But somehow he managed not to hear about the time the entire PHS senior class ditched and went to the beach, where I started my period unprepared in the one swimsuit that held the girls, and none of those bitches would give me a plug. I got to visit Dad's family in India in the summer a few times before I was 12, and Dadaji Dad's mom passed away. I'd tell her the same joke when I'd get off the long flight from LAX. Hi, cute Batman. Na-na, 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 Batman. Yes, Nataraj. That is indeed very funny, but I am not your mother's mother, I am your father's. she'd say in the Indian patois that got me teased when I tried to imitate it in the 6th grade. She also called me Nataraj, not the Nararsha that was Mom and Dad's young lover's compromise, but the Nataraj I would have been had Dad not crashed with his black girlfriend on the 110 freeway 6 months after I got here. Maybe she wanted me linked to her even though I lived far away. I don't know. Mommy was a song girl. I still have tape of her dancing in her USC cheerleader's getup. Those tits and ass looked better with the hourglass-shaped jean cut out by the part of the subcontinent Dad's family was from. I think she would have wanted me to call her Mommy. Pops calls her that he'd say, "You look like your mommy doing this." Or, "Your mommy sure would eat." I don't know. I've lived 8 years longer than Mommy, and he's way less protective, 'cause Algie is fixing the Nissan, and he's not already here. Screer! Nice day, though. The parrots roosting on top of a row of deodar trees. First gear. Walk like an Egyptian. Wah! Algie thought drowsily incompletely from inside a sleeping bag on top of a waterbed. Walk like an Egyptian. Something repeated from the one other room, and then blam ba-da dang 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 dasag danga. The music that compromised Natasha's ringtone started another day for Dr. Algebra Perry Davis III, but this a full hour before the 6 a.m. I'd usually get up. I picked up my phone and called Natasha. She must have left her phone over, I thought, as the sleep rolling from my brain allowed me to recognize the ringtone. Walk like an Egyptian. Walk like an Egyptian. From the other room, and I hang up my cell, letting my brain return to yesterday evening. Natasha actually got out of her car and came in further than she normally did. "Step into my lair," I said, hoping she would like to have a seat. She didn't seem on edge when I invited her in. There were a few moments I thought I had a chance, but she didn't stay long. Just long enough to take 4 sips from a bottle of water that was the only beverage I could offer. And before I knew it, she had to get back to something I couldn't get her to explain. So, I spent my night like so many in the past doing iterations my computer can do way easier, but they helped me get over. I developed a variation that was the spitting image of Mae West. As I step out the front door to admire my view of Los Angeles proper, the early morning reveals and the pockets of darkness of the money that doesn't need streetlights showed. This huge crow started screaming at me from under the roof. He did it 3 times, then 6 and 9, and it sounded like Monsanto or something to my mathematical mind as it tried to equate it. Glancing to where he flew over the house, I noticed that the door to one of its wings was hanging wide open. It's not in my lease to do maintenance, but I couldn't just leave it hanging open, I thought, as the crow flapped from one tree to another. "Who you tellin'? Who you trying to help? The Drake? Motherfucker, don't you know I was there?" said the Drake on a very important long and short distance phone call. "I seen the shit. Shit was funny. Bitches dancing around and chanting and canting, 'I am Mundungu. You will make it. I am Mundungu. And nothing will touch you,' and bang. Blue Eyes busted them tricks. He put 2 in the head and 1 off the dome. That fool made motherfuckers turn dead cold. Thought she was slick, all on that ship, and another sailed her people on a cotton-picking trip." The Drake cawed in his best Nate Dogg imitation. "Raccoon on the road smashed out." The awareness tickled a piece of the Drake's awareness, and the Drake beats wings down between the cars to nibble on fingers. Coon have declared jihad, been throwing gang signs for weeks. "Well, won't be throwing up any signs with these digits." The Drake giggled, enjoying the moments. "Me and that nigga Bilal been rolling on that ass." but I'll be damned if I call over a down soldier. Bilal down, too. You can call that nigga 5 times a day and he'll get you high. But who you tellin' I said I seen all that shit? I see it all. I'm the Drake. Cod. The Drake, but without too much chest. The Drake been there. The Drake ain't no duck. This ain't no fucking Aflac. After a shower and shine and tossing on some jeans and a purple t-shirt reading Black UFO Hippies, featuring a picture off a Parliament album, and uniformed teachers, tan corduroy jacket that young ones hadn't worn since the 60s. I noticed the hooks that hold my bike were missing the front wheel. Before I had the chance to walk like an Egyptian and call Nataraj's phone again, she pulled up from behind one of the huge bushes the trust doesn't want to maintain, smiling and waving. "Exchange of prisoners my phone for this," Natasha said, holding out an ultralight front bike tire. "Shibby, it was going to be hard going downhill doing the unicycle thing I was just about to go," I told her. "Ca! The door!" I mumbled, absent-mindedly yelling, "Hold on! Let me go close the door to the house!" over my shoulder. As I turned to go close, I was really happy that Natasha hopped out of the car and followed behind me. We walked over to the door, and going through it, noticed that a window high above the library, the room was open across the room. "Santa Ana wines do blow," I crooned at Natasha, surmising why the door was open in the first place. I hadn't been in the house too many times before, when I signed the lease as an undergrad, maybe a few times around holidays visiting the old lady. It was as impressive as Pasadena was 100 years ago. Almost like the stately Wayne Manor, a bit in miniature, that was also in Pasadena. But the intervening few decades were less than kind with the old lady old, then no one in it, and only me behind it. The library was full, but the books seemed like they had been hit with water a few times, with boxes all around the floor from where the trust must have gone through for anything of literary or monetary value. Natasha sat on a stack of 3 of them as opposed to the dusty chairs in the room. I don't know why I thought it would be rude looking at the things of people long dead, but I did. So I only caught glimpses as we began to put the papers away. Names, columns, ledgers, film tapes, a pink hat, all manner of things. And as we almost had things tidy enough to close the door and leave, I saw it. Elena Mumford said the name on the box, and Natasha said, "Hey, she's one of my heroes, the one rocket girl." "Sumina Corp," she explained, and the outlines of the story returned. Pasadena is anchored on one end by the Jet Propulsion Lab, and the Sumina Corp was the home of the Rocket Boys, and Sumina comprised the private part of the lab as well as a whole lot more. They do everything from engineering to manufacturing these days, and they have one of the few buildings the city fathers let grow taller than 15 stories right at the end of the freeway. They offered me a money job the moment my doctorate was accepted, and I still might take them up on it now that I think of it. Who was Elena? The daughter? I asked Natasha. No, silly, she was the girl, don't you know her? She was brilliant. She developed the patent on the radar that made Sumina what it was during World War II. She married Sam Underwood. But before she could finish telling me about Sam, I saw it. The tip of an equation. It was a simple thing, but it was so elegant, so beautiful. I had never seen an equation that hadn't introduced itself to me immediately before in my life, but this one didn't. It felt upset. It felt like it owed me something, I couldn't tell what. But the longing in it felt like making me cry, and I guess I must have been because it was Natasha's hands on me that broke me from sobbing. Before the hug I'd suddenly hoped would come to Natasha's phone went off. "No, Pops, I'm not," she said into the phone, followed by, "Sure, on the way down and in a few." "What time is it?" I ask, and she tells me from her phone 7 o'clock, and I know there is no way I can make it for my 8:30 seminar, even pumping downhill. On the walk back to my little house, I start dropping little hints about how late I'll be and sure wish someone would give me a ride so I can be on time. And by the end of the walk, she smiles and tells me as long as I didn't mind stopping by her pop's house and waiting for her to finish her class, then she'd give me a ride back and forth. "Shibby," I tell her again, making myself the only person to say that twice before 8 and think to myself how this going. Second gear. The next few months went by as if in a dream. The days were as lovely as Pasadena. But for algebra, at least, the nights were fraught with as much unrest as a pack of squirrels on methamphetamines. It turns out the Elena box was Pandora for Algie and his sleep. After opening it and seeing the sad equation and not understanding its nature, Algie didn't see Shaka, nor has the bag that serves as his bedclothes seen much in the way of sleep. Thankfully, teaching undergrad in the math department at Caltech is a lot like teaching a group of violinists born with the skills of Itzhak Perlman Twinkle Little Star. Not only was Algie content to let the 12-year-old genius so ginger that 10 minutes of direct sunlight made him physically sick handle his lectures, he almost had to. He was used the result of any equation becoming instantly as familiar as the opening lines of Happy Birthday. And without that ability, finding the inadvertent sign changes and lack of mechanical rigor in his students' work had become a trial. Thankfully, the nights of discontent were made shorter by all the evenings spent over Natarsha's house. But not with Natarsha as Algie's heart desired, but with her father, Pops. By the third day of the sleep trial, Algie was able to convince Natarsha that he couldn't ride his bike and was a danger to society on the roads. She didn't complain about having to drive out of her way. It was a solid 5 miles north from the bungalow heaven portion of Pasadena, where she and Pops lived to pick Algie up from his hillside perch before he taught his classes, and she worked on her dissertation and completed her seminars for her doctorate in astrophysics. It was as if they were a couple in all ways but physical and acknowledged. As for Algie, he didn't mind hanging out at her house before being taken back to the barner age he lived in. Human eyes are naturally blue, and any color the result of pigment. Natarsha's Pop's eyes looked like Frank Sinatra's, which belied the rest of his coloring, which could best be described as mandingo. It was uncanny how Algie felt like he knew him. I wish it was because I was spending so much time with Natarsha, thought Algie as he danced down to the basement of their home to spend another evening with Pops. But it wasn't for Natarsha, too, had been bitten by the Elena box. No, Natarsha had her own trial outside the equation of ultimate sadness that stormed Algie's dreams. 369 all set, said the cover along with diagrams and Natarsha speak. The few equations in it were sullen, unspeaking to Algie, but after Natarsha examined it, she took ownership of the collected papers as if they were part of her diary, exposing the most intimate secrets for her Pops to explore. Algie found it hard to consider the writings and graphs as a gift, as it had Natarsha running up to the clean portion of the house, her room at the top of the bungalow that looks like a fairy house smashed on the second floor from the street in a land where Algie was forbidden to go. More like a curse, because since finding it, no dreams, no deep sleep. It felt like time would hardly pass before Natarsha would make an excuse Algie couldn't get the explanation for, then leave Algie with her Pops for the evening before she'd stumble out of her room looking either in rapture or upset to take Algie home for his bout of wall staring. Outside the Mission Control Center of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory is a fairly long hallway where there is a mural that contains art by the mission. When something on the lab was completed, a representative would paint on the wall a family picture, so to speak, of America's success in space, and there, looking like the very black dude in Django clothes on the back of the $2 bill, was Pops for 25 years of those trips. By the end of the first month, why Pops was so initially familiar to Algie hit the sleep-starved thing his mind had become. "You ain't never lied, homie," Algie yelled as he hit the bong passed to him, made from the shell of what had been a light bulb costing $10,000 before blowing while testing spacecraft vainly attempting to imitate the sun and taking 15 of its brothers with it. The realization exploded into his consciousness. Pops was Bug-a-Bear. He had one line on a show Algie had caught all his life on TV Land, the Nostalgia Network, but there he was, forever Algie's age, 28, but trapped in 1970. Amber confirming the big Hollywood star's every cute thought. Pops went to Harvey Mudd and JPL for years, working in the public sector of the lab before retiring to Radio Shack's American Picker's wet dream in the basement of the bungalow. The star of the show went on to multiple rehabs, but he seems to have had a great life. Natarsha's grandmother had left many years before, unable to live among the clutter Pops collected. He couldn't stand to see the tools of the programs thrown away or sold for scrap, that helped throw RVS of science all the way to Mars and helped him fill other things. As Pops tried to fill the holes in his life left by his beautiful daughter's death on the curves of the 110 freeway with the clutter and oscilloscopes that pushed out his wife, the weed was medicine. Yeah, medicine. And as for Algie, not only was it nice to be social with Pops, it gave him an excellent excuse to be near Natasha, plus Pops assured he would sleep with the shit he smoked. Then Algie lost Pops too. It was so thin that when it initially fell out of Natasha's journal, Pops just grabbed it and placed it on top of a shelf to fall into the truly lost his realm could produce. It was a figure made out of a metal that nothing in the 25 years of engineering tools and devices in Pop's bungalow basement could even scratch. The best way to describe it would be an electric purple two-maze. It got to the point where he didn't even hit it when Algie passed him the bong, made from the sensor that didn't go to Titan because NASA didn't think in the same units of measure as its European partners. Pops had prodded, poked, and was currently spinning it suspended between two magnet-looking devices hooked up to more electricity than a suburban bungalow should have, as Algie bounded down the stairs to the basement and noticed the clock that apparently was tracking the length of whatever experiment Pops was conducting on the thing. The clock was calibrated in seconds, then fractions of them, and as Algie noticed the clock tick away, he noticed Pops staring into the spinning top. When the clock struck 22.140.000, it appeared as if the symbol inhaled ever so slightly and adopted a crystalline appearance. Pops saw it, for he startled, which made Algie drop the bong. In that moment, in the bowels of the City of Pasadena Power Department, an urgent and unusual request was made by the computers that modulate the flow of power to the city. Pasadena was built by the kind of wealth that doesn't depend on the vagaries of a national power grid. It had its own generating capacity that could handle many times the load of a town like Pasadena, but now it was as if every electron in the system had been drained to the point the computers running the systems themselves had a headache. Out went the electronic call for more help, which was answered by the Browning of the San Gabriel Valley, then the Southland, then the state, and beyond. The Mundunga came to awareness in the middle of a vision. She was puzzled, looking up at a sky that was crazily crisscrossed, with thick black strands of things that looked like a giant spider had laid webs in impossibly straight lines, and insects that glowed in colorful and blinking patterns on the sides of what looked huts that stretched to the sky. Strange way for paradise to look, she thought to herself, and then with intention she thought, I am Mundunga. Yes, dear, replied a presence that made the Mundunga drop any pretenses of her title and training. Mommy? Asked the Mundunga as a little girl named Nede. We don't have titles here, answered the presence, and yes. Just then, a small murder of crows landed on the strands of the web of the Nede's vision. You fucked up, said the biggest, most magnificent crow Nede had ever seen. Who told you to leave your warriors? The crow accused. It then came back in horrifying detail what had transpired in some other understanding of time, and with the memory came new understanding. I sent the warriors in my charge forward. They are playing with the ancestors. I could tell from the young one I sent first. I was successful. I sat on the bottom of the sea for a long time, I know. Nady spilled the guts of her excuses, and at the same time knowing them to be incomplete. You fucked up, said the crow again, looking to his friends and laughing. Why did you think that was the only ship to sail that day with your line? And with that, the crow and his friends ended their conference. Caw and Nendi could feel the pain of her error. How many generations unreleased? So many souls you'll be busy, baby, said the voice. Do I have to go back as human, Mommy? Will I know you again? Will I have to go through the training? Am I Mundunga? That and a million questions flooded Nede's consciousness. No thing is ever the same, answered Nede's mother, and not mother. It was then the lights in Pasadena, the San Gabriel Valley.
Most people are using artificial intelligence. Very few are training with it. BrilliantDojo is black belt training for the age of AI. Here, we practice 4 disciplines. Recognize drift when an answer sounds right but leaves your actual intent behind. Hold context because the frame determines what the system can see. Restore signal, separating probability from meaning. And preserve judgment because assistance is not authority. We'll study transformers, attention, softmax, prompt discipline, and the archive integrity protocol. Then we'll test those ideas in the field, in stories, and occasionally in worlds where the dojo was never supposed to exist. No worship. No fear. No surrender of the human mind. The doors are open. Enter curious. Leave more capable.
Third gear. Natasha dreamt fitfully. She danced with her father wearing her mother's old USC uniform, and she danced with Pops, and she danced with Algie. She even danced with her 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Lakshmi. She might have danced forever, but then she heard, "Walk like an Egyptian," and the ringtone of her phone awakened her to a completely dark room. The first thing she thought about upon waking was the journal she had been captured by belonging to Elena Mumford, but she quickly detected its presence on her belly after having apparently slid off her chest. The second thing she noticed was the time. It was past 2 o'clock in the morning, and she hadn't taken Algie home, and as she jumped out of her bed to turn on the lights to the hall outside, she noticed the lights weren't just off in her room but out in her house. Pop's experiments, she thought, until she went outside to see if Pop's Lincoln was in the driveway. Natasha was met by a sight that had not been seen in Southern California since Edison won. The Milky Way revealed itself in all its glory incredibly bright overhead. Natasha obviously loved space. She had spent her life so far studying the intricacies and fabric of the cosmos like a monk in cloister. Natasha had traveled to telescopes and seen a dark sky, but never from Pasadena. As Natasha looked north towards Mount Wilson and the observatories constructed before Los Angeles County became awash in light to orient her tour of wonder, she became even more delighted that she couldn't find the Big Dipper among the riot of stars. "Power's out. Not just here, everywhere, all over the state," said Natasha, and Pop's sweet, friendly 13-year-old neighbor kid, Richie. He and his father had apparently decided to take real advantage of the blackout. They were currently in the front yard of their bungalow with one of those telescopes that come with 20 eyepieces but are impossible to point. "Yeah, Richie, it's lovely, isn't it?" Natasha said, holding her robe so as not to scandalize the child. Natasha then noticed that Pop's Lincoln was still in the driveway and remembered Algie and Pops in the basement. After pointing out a quick tip on some things to look for and confirming that their cell phone app that finds the stars was indeed accurate, Natasha excused herself and went to go see what Algie and her grandfather were up to. After securing a flashlight and the beam of safety through Pop's world it provided, Natasha went through the kitchen and down the little hall to the door and then down to Pop's basement. The first thing that met her was the smell. Natasha was used to forms of combustion caused by Pops, but this smelled totally different. And then she saw Pop sitting over his workbench with his head in his chest, looking as sweetly asleep as she had been just 30 minutes before. But Algie, he looked as if he had been knocked off the stool he normally sat on when he visited with Pop by a bag of angry sledgehammers. Natasha felt a pang in her womb, as if she were heading down the world's steepest roller coaster as Algie sat up to reveal that on the left side of his face was Mike Tyson, an impression of the Elena symbol. "Oh, my God, Algie!" Natasha exclaimed loud enough to wake the dead, but not Pops, for it was then that Natasha became really concerned that her first impression of peaceful sleep might be wrong, and went over to touch the neck and chest of Pops. "Ow, ow, ow!" Algie moaned, coming to, and the roller coaster in Natasha's womb took another dip as she noticed the symbol had the same unearthly hue it had exhibited to Pops and Algie before the surge. "Algie, get up, Pops is passed out. I can't wake him up, help me," Natasha said with mounting alarm. As Algie seemed to be gathering himself, he said simply, "It hurts so bad." Then he began to cry, but this time, not like when he met the equation. This time, it was with the weight of generations of sorrow. He felt the roads of the South after the Civil War and the pain of looking for ancestors long sold away. He felt the waters of Ebenezer Creek and the cries of the drowned, and he moaned. Algie was no help to Natasha in getting Pops up the stairs. The trip to Huntington Hospital and getting them both up the stairs seemed to Natasha almost impossible at first, but she managed to wrestle them up the stairs and into Pop's 1967 Continental. Thankfully, Maxie wasn't behind it because, unlike Natasha's Maxima, Pop's Continental was kept in top mechanical shape. After assuring Richie everyone was going to be all right and turning down the offer to call an ambulance, Natasha put Pops in the back with an assist from Richie, and Algie stumbled in the front of the suicide doors, and Natasha headed for the hospital. The Drake cursed loudly. "Bitch, I don't know this motherfucker." "This motherfucker wasn't there and I was," said the Drake, cawing excitedly over a crash nest he shared with his main squeeze, Mary. "Who you callin' a bitch?" Mary exclaimed, ruffling up her feathers as just as an impressive creature. Mary was the Drake's cawgirl. They were tight, been together forever. Like crows do. Shit, she was there with me. The Drake thought, "So who is this motherfucker? Where did he come from?" The Drake cawed accusingly at Mary. "He kinda looks like Sid Harda, that pretty motherfucker with the high voice. First of all, you ain't shit. We're never shit ain't gonna be shit and couldn't make shit if they filled you full of X-Lax. And just who the fuck do you think you are?" She cawed louder than the last, and then, "He came from the same place as you." "Immaculate egg, my ass," said the Drake, losing some of his anger, and then, "What's the little nigga's name?" the Drake asked, cawing down even more. "Shit, nigga, I don't know, I just met him myself," cawed Mary back, shrugging her shoulders as if crows had them. Just then, as if to test him, the Drake vomited up some juice from a possum he had seen fall from a high branch and lain dead for 2 weeks. "Stupid motherfucker," thought the Drake. "Fuck him, shouldn't climb if you can't hold on." Then, as the little bird snorted it up, he exclaimed, "Hey, my nigga hit it though. We gonna get high as giraffe ass together." And with that, he and Mary called it a day. KNX 1070 News Radio sang the AM radio in Pop's Continental as Natasha drove west down Colorado Boulevard toward the hospital. The reports, however, were not full of people enjoying the new view of the universe the blackout provided, like Natasha had only an hour before, but talked of people taking advantage of the fact the closed liquor stores were without power. The reporter was discussing the sight of a man pushing a powered forklift full of brand new high-definition television up Crenshaw Boulevard in Los Angeles, when Natasha banged into the wrong car full of young black men. "Let me handle this, milady," said Algie, stirring from the passenger seat and using the same Renaissance corny Algie had shown those months ago before the Elena box. Algie hoped out the car with the bundle of insurance information Pops kept handily under the sun visor. Natasha smiled at him, and smiled even more to hear Pops coming to in the back seat. And as Algie talked to the man, even throwing in some kind of bow to the young man whose car she hit, she truly wondered what Algie must have said to make the young man hit him. It felt like he was hit by a battleship, as the young man who identified himself as Frankie Cuz, slurring out the Cuz part with menace that showed he didn't intend on being family, smacked him. Frankie reached back and slapped Algie right on his freshly made and still quite painful Elena mark with a sound of a bat breaking. "Oh shit," exclaimed Frankie's friend from his passenger seat. "Slap the soul out of that motherfucker," and cackled in a poor imitation of Morris Day from the time. "It's crazy what happens, then. Wow, I'm a grown man," thought Algie, as well as, how am I going to get out of this? But upon contact, Algie was surprised to find that it didn't hurt. Not only did it not hurt, but the Elena mark didn't hurt anymore. Just when he heard someone laughing from Frankie's car, the part of his mind that had not had sleep for so long woke up. The ability he had as the friend in the library and next to the bed woke up, and he knew the nature of the equation. Mundunga, he thought. It said its name was Nettie, and as he considered the prospect, he thought about loss and obligation. But even as his mind made acquaintance with Nettie, his body continued to stand with the mark on the side of his face, now glowing in the same eerie black lack of color the Elena symbol in algae, but not his essence, stepped to the gangbanger appearing to the world as if lit by strobe lights. Algae's opponent took on the aspect as if he were moving underwater. Algae easily saw the next fist, and he grabbed it easily, effortlessly. Then, the essence that controlled him interlocked his fingers with those of the gangbanger and broke them. As Frankie screamed in agony, his friend came out from the passenger seat of the car armed with what looked to Algae a pistol. "I'm going to die," thought Algae, as the second gangbanger leveled the pistol and fired. "The glance," thought Nettie, and then so did Algae. And as the bullet approached Algae's head without conscious thought, the molecules of Algae's head made the vibration which caused the 99.99% of his head that is air no longer recognize their counterparts in the lead of the bullet coming at his head, and it bounced off his cheekbone, making a sound like a curious tink as it bounced off the ground. The same thing happened to the other 16 shots in the clip, and as Algae and not Algae stepped to the gangbanger, he smiled. "You ain't never lied, homie." Pop's voice pulled Algae from the strange duality to find his hands squeezing the gangbanger's face. He was screaming loud enough to have gathered a crowd as if the gunshots and the man with the mangled fingers hadn't been, and bleeding through his Overdrive Frankie and Cuz were hurt and bleeding, but not damaged beyond repair. After the altercation, Pops and Natasha had no problem getting Algae to Huntington, for although he had come through the fight unhurt, there was still the Elena mark to have examined. Pops assured everyone he had his medicine at home. When the physician assistant's curiosity at the shock the mark gave when probed with any metal threatened to keep all three there all night, they beat a retreat out a back door when she went to go find superiors. When they returned to the bungalow, the sun was already shaking the parrots that called Pasadena home awake, and a flight of them screeched overhead as Pops pulled his Lincoln into his driveway with Natasha and Algae holding hands in the back seat. He barely said goodnight and leave the keys on the hooks if you take Algae home, with everyone taking a mental stutter on the if in the sentence. As Pops walked through the living room and down the hall to his bedroom where he closed the door silently, Algae said, "I'm so tired, want to ride me to the pad?" Algae asked Natasha. "No," she answered, and with eyes he knew he could never refuse, said, "Come on, Algebra," and she led him upstairs to her fairy sanctum that had been forbidden to Algae. Eventually, Algae was able to sleep. A true sleep, refreshing like Algae had never experienced. But before that sleep there was dancing, punctuated with sighs and the repetition of names and the whispering of secret oaths only known to lovers who had held each other away for too long. "Algebra," she said. When her bra fell off on the accent of his name, he knew he would never be able to sleep in his sack alone again, and they flowed together. In their explorations, they found that Natasha too had an Elena mark, but in a very secret place. Algae placed his own mark branded on his cheek on hers, which made Natasha know that she too would never be able to sleep alone again, because when they made that connection, even the house itself came, and they danced together. Algae dreamt. To the rest of the world, he was snoring with a sound that made the rockets that sent Pop's old work into space sound like gentle waves, with Natasha similarly asleep snuggled under his right arm. Algae talked to a little girl in a meadow. She told him about a big mistake made in another understanding of time. How the vibrational energy he used while under the spell of the Elena mark opened a portal that let ancestors through. She told me about the line, how it had been so spread across the middle passage that even the white men with the strange hue now carry it. He can't kill with all that energy, no matter how high the crows get. Especially his own bloodline the mark could detect, as that makes the work harder, stacking souls in limbo for eternity. He was a word from an African language Algae's mind couldn't understand, but sounded a lot like Dogon, and the name of what had been the sad equation Mundunga, but how somehow nothing is the same, so many souls to release, but he dreamt he would try. Algae dreamt further of a beautiful young man, maybe 15 years old, with the most radiant smile he had ever seen. And as he smiled and waved, he yelled, "Thank you," and joined a game of other 15-year-olds. and with the emotion of satisfaction, the young man was finally home. Algie knew he would do more for Innati than try he would do. The 6 months after the blackout changed Algie, Natasha and Pop's lives completely. When Algie attempted to return to the classes, he found the faculty frowned on prospective professors with such radical personal self-decoration habits. Despite the protestations and quickly organized student petition, he was fired. The Elena mark looked like a very bad prison tattoo. Despite however brilliant he might be, it didn't matter so much as aspects of Natasha's Elena gifts began to manifest themselves. 3, 6, 9, 18, 27 bonus number is 69, said the blonde news lady on the local news affiliate just a few days after Algie had been fired. Pops always kept his TVs on that channel because he loved their coverage of the Rose Parade. There was one winning ticket, and that lucky rascal bought that ticket from Ray's Liquor outside of Caltech right here in the Southland in good old Pasadena, she added with false enthusiasm. The television in the kitchen Algie, Natasha, and Pops had shared since the blackout was then knocked off its hazardous perch as Natasha jumped up. "Oh my God, algebra, that's Mommy's birthday. I play that every..." And then pulling a lotto ticket out of her purse. "Week. The winning ticket is worth $390 million. Congratulations out there, someone isn't going to have to go to work." Algie noticed she now called him Algebra and thought, that's okay, she can call me anything she wants. The trust that owned the house wasn't dead, it was just indifferent. When Natasha made them an attractive offer on the house, whatever had administered it signed it with enough speed to ensure it no longer had to live a life of former glory anymore. The house had ample room to express another nature of Natasha's Elena, Mark, and Pops as well. The Barnerage turned out to be a better lab than garage or apartment, and it fit Pop's world into itself like it had access to the fourth dimension for old tools and bongs, and it had the backbone to support an indulgent daughter with too much money to spend on the new tools Pops required. Natasha said eventually they'd make a ship, but on Pop's work desk was a device that Natasha said would make it possible to charge any 100-foot length of conductor through some machinations of the magnetosphere. I don't know about the theory, but the math looked fascinating and told me its name was Toshi. Algie got another mark too, a tattoo, but this time it was a decoration of his choosing and over his heart. The image of the dancing Shiva, the Nataraj. As Pops was moving a box of resistors that allowed too much electricity into the circuits to go to Mars, he noticed the film from the Elena box and a pink hat. Upon threading it in a projector as unfamiliar to the age as the little 45 things in the middle of 45 records and NASA stenciled on the side, Pops showed the film upon the wall that looked like it had held tack in some other time, and the movie began. Sumina X Secret Eyes. Only said the header as Pops picked up a bong made from the spokes of an inadvertent rover and took a long hit. A black Lincoln Continental turns right onto a street as part of a parade with several cars in front and behind it. In the Continental was a smiling and waving man with a beautiful woman in a pink hat sitting next to him. As the limousine turns left onto a street, then comes to a full stop. Algie enters the open door behind him with the friendly, "You ain't never lied, homie," that had become the inside joke between he and Algie that was open with America. Just then, the smiling, waving man is struck by 3 bullets almost simultaneously from unmistakably the front as the camera was looking dead at him. 2 ticks later, another takes his head almost clean off from the rear. "Wow, what are you watching? History Channel?" said Algie, and then he noticed the projector and the pink hat. As for the location of Pop's Elena mark, his new friend found that, and she let us know while dining at the In-N-Out burger joint, for despite the newfound wealth, Algie and Natasha still had the tastes of starving students. It was the blonde, with the same colored eyes as Pop's, that had played a role as a private detective or something. Algie didn't know too much about her show. It came on after his bedtime when it was new and never had enough followers to make it to TV land, but Pops seemed to like her. And she really liked the idea a man of Pop's age was getting ink where he did. Must be something in that family, thought Algie. Algie put on his new customized leathers. Ja UFO hippies for Tesla, emblazoned in a script Natasha designed in silver across his back and sat on the back of his new bike. He had traded the racing pedal-powered lightweight racer for a Hayabusa 1300, almost the same color as the Elena mark in its dark phase. He made one customization in the paint scheme, a copy of his mark on one side of the tank and an African spear on the other. As he rode the bike into another beautiful Southern California morning with the parrots screeching overhead, he wondered what Pasadena, Texas was like and how many souls he could free. Vroom!